Good morning. I'm Joey Chan. A woman in Canada, not having been dating for more than 23 years, met online her Prince Charming, who used the promise of love and everything he knew she wanted to hear and lure her into lending him money because of temporary banking issues. He told her she was doing this for their future. In the end, she is among the 780 reported victims who collectively lost a total of 22.5 million Canadian dollars that year to online romance scams. Meanwhile, a woman in Australia who received a text from a bogus bank manager giving her an investment pitch that promised her a comfortable retirement life tricked her into handing over her life savings equivalent to 550,000 Canadian dollars for fake shares in a real company. Not trying to minimize her loss, but it amounts to less than 1% of the 65 million Canadian dollars that were reported to have been lost in the same type of scams over only the first half of 2021 in Australia. In Hong Kong, the city where I currently live, a businesswoman received an email from someone who claimed to be a mainland China official, accusing her of involving in illegal content in one of her delivery packages. To prove her innocence, she was told to pay deposits for the fine that would be returned to her after investigations. Over 7 to 8 times, she unsuspectedly transferred over money equivalent to 1.9 million Canadian dollars before she realized she had fallen for the city's biggest phone scam ever. Is she one of a kind? In fact, her loss is among the 31 million Canadian dollars handed over to these organized investment scammers in Hong Kong only in the first 3 quarters of that year. There was also this 70-year-old Indigenous lady who had been told by a friendly stranger about a miracle healer who could help her rid of her chronic health issues, had her belongings that had a value equivalent to 57,000 Canadian dollars swapped out while they were being used by the healer as a praying bundle. Other elderly handed over their money when someone had called and claimed that they had held their adult children hostage. They were not allowed off the phone or their children would be gunned down instantly. They were escorted over the phone to the bank to retrieve the money and leave it at drop-off points. Together, 1.1 million Canadian dollars of their lifetime hard-earned money got shelled out by these cold-blooded scammers just in the year 2020. In light of COVID, some of this type of scams have now moved online, using text messages to approach the elderly. Governments and law enforcement have been putting massive efforts into scam prevention. Still, the number of victims and the money lost has been on the rise every single year. The victims come from all backgrounds and all ages. I get infuriated by every one of these new cases reported in the news, and I desperately want to know how we can help put the rising number to a stop. So I decided to first look into why. What are the most common causes why people fall prey to scams? In a lot of chat forums, people bring up greed and stupidity, with which I disagree. Not only is it cruel for us to tell a person who has just been let down and cheated that they're stupid and greedy, but science also does not agree with these opinions. So here are some research findings for what really makes people fall for scams. For example, scammers create a sense of trust, or they create a sense of urgency. They may also take advantage of FOMO, which stands for the fear of missing out. They also use the principle of reciprocity by doing us a favor to make us feel obliged to do something back for them. Like when they tip us off with the once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. People fall for scams also because of the principle of similarity, when we tend to trust those who are similar to us. Sounds exactly like what that Prince Charming did to that poor lady. And then the herd psychology, which we may be more familiar with. Hold on, I was thinking. There are too many causes to address. What makes things worse is, as my research went on, I was exposed to more and more types of scams that happen all over the world. Immigration scams, tech support scams, phishing, inheritance scams, Ponzi schemes, charity scams, with each type constantly evolving and improving. Just like how a Chinese idiom goes, when enforcement ups by an inch, the lawbreakers up a foot. I had so much of my hair pulled out to think of one surefire way to prevent online scams. Scams for young children, scams for women not familiar with the internet, women looking for love or a comfortable retirement life, elderly looking for health and peace, and simply mothers who have an instinctive love for their children. I thought really hard, just as my hope was diminishing in the face of this overwhelming and discouraging amount of information. And I was, as usual, distracted by other tabs of my browser. It all of a sudden occurred to me that there might be this one person whom I can turn to. No, this person is not a professional hacker nor an agent from the FBI's cyber division. In fact, this person is a woman, ordinary in every way possible. But for one, this woman relies a little too heavily on the internet. For those who are familiar with Maslow's pyramid, this is about as accurate as it gets as the needs for this woman. To start with, she has now spent decades playing online games, come across so many players online, and not only has she not been involved with any sort of frauds, but has rather become lifelong friends with some really nice people. She also once found love online, although it didn't last. One thing for sure was there was no trust failed and no money lost. She went on to get married to another guy in 2012. She still jokes to this day that she bought her entire wedding online. From the candy buffet to the bouquet to every single piece of decoration, and even her wedding gown. She ran into issues with none of the sellers for all these things knew. This woman also books flights and hotels and activities online for trips to destinations near and far, and never has she fallen for a tourist trap. Also, a lot of us now order our food and groceries online, don't we? Especially after COVID. Not only did she start doing this way back before COVID, from the first box of chocolate she bought online from Belgium in 1998, since then, she also has bought toilet seats from Korea, tableware from the Middle East, chocolate spice from Sydney, hair loss prevention shampoo from Germany, and she has made it out, never been conned for once. On top of buying products online, she also buys services. She has once paid for someone to help her with a poem in a foreign language for her mother-in-law and found someone to mix a song she had sung. For a backpacking trip to Tokyo, she had even hired a Japanese online to help her make a table reservation that could be made only by locals, and another gentleman in Thailand to buy and post her these special candles in the flea market. She got all of these done without being cheated. And she has also been on the receiving end. She once ran a small business online, and she still sells in the secondhand market for herself and her family. Never has she run into any buyers taking advantage of her. In fact, it is easier to ask her which resources in her life she didn't get from the internet than asking her which ones do. She relies so much on the internet, it may sound unhealthy to many. And this person is, embarrassingly, me. Seeing the huge number of tabs I constantly have open in search of resources online, I thought to myself, would my low scam to internet time ratio help shed any light on one key way to prevent scams? But then I was thinking, do I really just use only one way, one technique, one method to steer away from scams all these years? Do I? Do I not? Do I? Do I not? I couldn't seem to remember. But since the preparation for this talk commenced 6 months ago, tens of online scammers have already found their way to me in just half a year. And I took the chance to reflect on how I reacted to all of them. Turns out, I do use only one way, one technique, one method to steer away from all of them. I realized that the one way I got away from all of them is, when an email told me that they have hacked into my web camera and had recorded me going on adult websites, and they're going to expose the recording to my friends and family if I don't pay them by Bitcoins, I went, Turns out it has been an email scam that has been going on for a while after a simple Google search. When a Facebook ad from a local shop says they're closing down because of COVID, and their signature product line is on an unprecedented huge discount from their online shop, I went, After calling up the shop to verify, it turns out the online shop is a disguise. When a person who seemingly messaged the wrong person telling me their boss has instructed him to pick me up at the airport and so he'd like to know what time my flight is, I went, Turns out someone online shared that they had received similar wrong messages, and this seems to be a new way tricksters approach people for a romance scam. In the beginning of the COVID, when I saw people forwarding pictures of dolphins and swans frolicking in the waters of Venice, because apparently humans were undergoing self-quarantine, I went, Turns out they're old photos of normal activities of these animals in other areas put together to mislead the internet. When someone shared a lucky draw that gives an iPhone, an iPad, a Starbucks gift card, or a Superstore voucher, I went, Turns out these are scams that have been around a long time to collect people's personal data and to scam people of delivery charges to ship them their prizes. Finally, when people forward secret health tips or insider news leaks about COVID or about an approaching hurricane, what do I do before I went for a fact check? That's right. As you can see, the reaction of is not a snap that instantly wipes out all scammers from the face of the earth, but rather it is when we encounter an experience for the first time. We encounter a new situation for the first time, even when we hear a certain story for the first time. Is the critical pause we need to process our thoughts, to verify the story, and to fact check. It is an extremely critical pause we need before we jump into action in the modern world where a huge amount of information and scams reach us easier than ever, every single day. On the contrary, I'm not usually one who has decided not to trust anyone in the world of mortals, or one who vetoes dinner ideas. In fact, I've been made fun of by my friends playing with my hyperactivity disorder as having hyper-optimism. This means for the people I know, for familiar ideas, and I'm in familiar situations, I often go all out and put in an unrealistic amount of trust. But thanks to the chance to come across evolutionary psychology, I was blessed with the awareness that many people out there are willing to do almost anything just to survive. When they're on the verge of running out of basic needs such as money, they can do anything out of their way for, especially to people who don't matter to them. You might wonder, the bosses behind these organized crimes don't need more money. They've scammed way too much out of innocent people. True, they don't need money, but their followers do. Cross-border investigations led to the knowledge that these organizations hire people from poor areas to do the dirty job for them, to make the calls to the women, to text with the girls, to approach the elderly. After putting this out, scammers might try extra hard to ruin the clean track record of this big mouth. Half joking aside, even if they do, all I want for is one day when there will never again be a single person who has to be scammed of the money they had spent all their life saving up, who have their trust betrayed, who have their hopes shattered, who have their heart broken, who have to feel stupid just because they've trusted, who have to feel greedy just because they've trusted. Once again, we can go all in, be as hyper-optimistic as we can be to trust those we know, trust those or what that is familiar to us. But when we encounter an experience for the first time, we encounter a new situation for the first time, when we hear a certain story for the first time, what do we all do? Thank you very much.